Okay, so we're back with another clip of PuckPod by BD Sports. This time we're going to go over the Central Division trades. Obviously, Dave's not with us right now. Fortunately, he probably had to shovel the snow or he's sleeping or something, but that's okay. Christian, how is the snow for you?
Lots of snow out there. Yeah, my dad just took out the snowblower. He's been going at it. I went out there. I'm like, yo, do you even want me? He's like, nah, dude. I've been awake since like 7:30. So I woke up at 9, and I somehow got saved from having to do any shoveling work, which pretty surprising, honestly. How about you, Brian?
Oh man, that was tough. Brought the snowblower, but that's okay. At the end of the day, got the job done, and you know, it makes you think like, should we move elsewhere to get away from the weather? But if you look at the teams in the Central, most of them get bad weather like Toronto. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, Dallas had a really bad snowstorm. But it leads us to our first team, the Dallas Stars, the first place team in the Central Division. How do you feel with their moves? They added Domi and they added Dadanov in exchange for Guryanov and I
Well,
believe a third.
yeah. I think the only one I'm gonna pull it up as well just to see what the return was on that one there. But the data one, I mean, it's pretty small, and I mean, you're giving up like Gurianov, who had potential. Like that guy's a burner, man. Like I remember watching him when they made their cup final run. Like that guy, when he gets an open like when he gets open ice, he flies. He's a missile, that guy. He already scored for Montreal, so I don't know. We'll see if Gurianov can find his potential in Montreal because yeah, it wasn't working in Dallas under two coaches, right? Bonus and under DeBoer this year. So I mean, when you look at it that way, they got something for him. They got Dadanov, who might give them maybe a little bit more value than Gurianov was giving them. So that's a whatever move. That's a typical contender type move. And then the other one is bringing in Domi for a second rounder. But they were also able to get off of Hudobin's cap hit in the process. So tiny piece of work there. Is Domi worth a second? Um, not that it remains to be seen. Me and Dave, whenever we talked about should the Leafs be in on Domi, we always compared him to Galchenyuk because the Galchenyuk acquisition, or yeah, it was an acquisition from Carolina, and we got him for pennies on the dollar because he wasn't worth much. We brought him in. He started performing well. He's putting up points, and he was great until he wasn't because he had the turnover in the Montreal series, and it was like all that value, all of that goodwill he built up right out the window. And we kind of had that same feeling with Domi. So we'll see. Dallas is usually a defensively responsible team, but under Pete DeBoer, they've got the offense going now too. So we're going to see how Domi fits in. It could be a good fit. It depends on where they slot him in the lineup. But in a vacuum, seems decent. I'm surprised they didn't do more though. Like I think they were one of the teams in on Patrick Kane, so that would have been a huge acquisition. And to go from Patrick Kane to Max Domi and not much more is a little rough. But you look at the rest of the West, and it's not like too much happened anyways. So they kind of kept pace, and they can definitely still be one of the best teams out of not only their division but like the whole conference. What do you think about it, though, Brian?
I think that they got better. I think kind of sucks that Guryanov didn't in Dallas didn't really work out. You thought that it was one of the things that like the average fan, the average person would think, oh, this is a good fit. It should work on paper. The math adds up,
Yeah,
but sometimes it just doesn't work. And I think that the swap is okay. I mean, it works out for Dallas in the sense that they had something new. I like Domi. I like the Domi pickup to be honest. It just gives them a little bit more depth down the middle, gives them a little bit more speed, right? But at the end of the day, like you said, the West didn't do much. Specifically, um, specifically most of the teams in the division, like they literally didn't do anything. The biggest pickup was Ekholm across the whole conference, right? So they got better. They're probably going to remain in the first spot for the division, potentially even the whole conference, just because the team's on fire. But we have to see. I like their team top to bottom, though. I mean, down the middle, it's Hints. They could go Sagan, Domi, or Johnson. I mean, they have options, right? And
that's an underrated guy too, right? Like Wyatt Johnson has made them a lot deeper, right? That was a guy who not really anybody expected to stick with the team, and he has, and he's put up like 28 points in 62 games. That's third line center stuff, and that's not nothing. It really isn't.
And you know what? Like you said, Pete DeBoer's got them to score. That's one of the main things that they needed. Also, I kind of want to see how their goalie Jake Onger does again because like last year he was amazing in the playoffs. He's probably I want to argue he's the best goalie in the league last year's playoffs. Maybe I want to see if we can do it
He's
again.
honestly still like top five though. Like his numbers are stellar in 46 games, 923 save percentage, 25-8 record, 2.29 goals against. He's showing you that they're pretty good defensively still. It's funny. Like I talk about how good they are defensively, and then I look at their decor. It's obviously led pretty well by Heiskanen. That guy's like a top 10 defender in the league. After that, though, like it's kind of a steep drop off. I'm actually surprised um,
Isn't there
that
just
it
a bunch of
isn't deeper
Europeans
than
this
I
year?
thought.
Isn't it?
Yeah, like you have Lindell, who has been a mainstay there. That's like their go-to defensive guy. He averages 20 minutes a night, so that's fine. You have like Yanni Hakanpää. Yanni Hakanpää is getting 19 minutes a night. I don't know if I want that guy playing 19 minutes a night. Ryan Suter, 38 years old, 20 minutes a night. At the same time, I don't really want to criticize him too much because the Leafs have a 38-year-old or 39-year-old who's doing pretty well for us in Giordano. So I guess he is their Giordano. Nils Lundqvist, like this is a rookie basically, right? This guy doesn't have any playoff experience. It's and then they've got like Joel Hamby right now playing on the top pairing. I guess it's because Colin Miller is injured. They've got him as a scratch. It's I'm honestly just surprised looking at their defense. I kind of think they might have decided to make a move on defense over forward, but I guess play to your strength.
Also, we can't ever count out a defense with Miro the hero. Like, just you just can't.
Oh, that guy turns it up in the playoffs. That guy turns it up.
Want to go to the next green team we have?
Let's do it.
All right. So the next green team we have is literally green, the Minnesota Wild. They they had an interesting, I want to say, trade deadline because they kind of bought, they kind of sold, and they were kind of like the mortgage broker of everything. If that makes sense, like just for Bill Guerin retaining salary for draft picks. I mean, it works out, but they also brought in Klingberg and Marcus Johansson, which I thought was kind of interesting, right? They're playing well this season. I believe they're second or third in the division as of right now. I think that
They're hot lately. I think they're like 7-3. Like they've been heating up.
man, like it's weird because I have a feeling Bill Guerin knows that this is not their year, so he's loading up the draft picks, right? But it's almost as if he's like saying, "I'm still gonna reward the boys because they've been playing well," you know. And I kind of think it's kind of interesting because he's in purgatory in the sense that we have teams like Vancouver that don't really know what they're doing. But when you look at what Bill Guerin is doing, kind of like it in the sense that he's acquiring assets and building his team now so that when all the cap issues go away in a couple of years, or is it next year that they all go away? I believe
No, they've got
two
cap
more
issues. I
years.
think for 2 years, 2 more years after this one. Yeah, it's not gonna get too easy anytime soon.
But I don't. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of that in the sense that like that's draft capital. They could use that to actually in
Yeah.
their benefit in order to get rid of those cap issues. In regards to the moves, let's go by them one by one. Let's start with my favorite player that they got, Marcus Johansson. This is a
Oh yeah.
guy that has been playing bottom 6 minutes, but he puts up points. I believe he has 28 to 29 points, which is pretty good for a fourth liner, third liner. Obviously, he's played
Yeah, man.
up the lineup here and there, but um, Marcus Johansson does it all, and we've seen him in a Minnesota jersey before. He's obviously he's obviously been passed around the league a bit, but hopefully this time he does well. I'm kind of happy for him as a Capitals fan. Gets a chance at a cup because obviously, like we're not going to be in the playoffs, but I don't know.
Ryan knows I like Mojo. I would have liked a little bit of Mojo action here in Toronto, and they paid like a fair price for Mojo, like a steal, right? I think third round pick. Honestly, I might give the edge to you guys in value there. Like that's a decent little bit of business. Um, my favorite move they made is one that I wrote about. That really any contending team could have made, and that was bringing in Gustav Nyquist, and they brought him in for a fifth round pick. Why do I like this move? I like this move because Gustav Nyquist is currently not playing hockey. He's injured. He might be injured until playoff time. What does that mean? It means he doesn't count against their salary cap. Any single team making the playoffs could have probably added this guy and it would just been like bonus onto your playoff lineup. Even if he plays one game, I'd say it was worth a fifth round pick, right? Like that's the type of move you're making here. This is after the league put out a memo. This is from Chris Johnston saying that like, hey guys, we're gonna be watching if you make these types of trades, and then they literally made this trade. So I wouldn't really be too worried about Bettman knocking on Minnesota's door, tell them surrender all your draft picks or whatever. But I do have to say, like, that was a shrewd move by Bill Guerin, and really he made a bunch of shrewd moves. Sundqvist for a fourth to replace Greenway after getting a second and fifth from Buffalo. He didn't really lose too much, at least for this season. In the future, it remains to be seen. Greenway might get back on the tracks in Buffalo, but for this playoff run, you're doing well there, and you actually gained assets. And then we talked about Klingberg last clip in Anaheim section. You take Klingberg for a fourth. Doesn't matter which team you are. You take him with all of his warts. We understand what type of player John Klingberg is. He's absolutely worth a fourth. So a bunch of shrewd moves by Guerin. Like you said, kind of walking the fine line between selling and buying. And I think he walked it really well, to be honest.
What do you think about their top four? Jacob Middleton, Jared Spurgeon, Klingberg, Dumba. Or I don't like you can even pick
Brodin as well.
Goligoski.
So Brodin's injured. Throw Brodin in with Spurgeon, Klingberg, Dumba. I'll be very surprised if I don't see them doing Klingberg and Dumba on the same pair, right? That doesn't sound like a good idea. They're both righties too, so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're the same player, right? They're very similar
Very
players.
similar. Yeah.
But you can now do two pairs that almost like emulate each other, right? Like they're the same pair. You can go Brodin, Dumba, Spurgeon, Klingberg, kind of all the same thing, right? So I kind of like that. And Klingberg's guaranteed to have a defensively responsible partner now. So that's something low key that like maybe we see this guy return to his old form. We talked about this too. Like Klingberg was good for Dallas on their cup run. It's not out of the question that he becomes or returns to being good offensively and average defensively to the point where he's not costing goals against. That's totally within the realm of possibility. So tough to fault them there. I want to touch real quick. Who's their goalies, Brian? Who are the two goalies?
It's Fleury and I don't know who the backup is.
They flipped this guy for Talbot. They got Philip Gustafson from Ottawa. Fleury's stats in 37 games: 905 save percentage, 2.81 goals against, 19 and 13 record. Philip Gustafson, 28 games, 930 save percentage, 2.06 goals against. 930 in 28 games, 930.
Wow.
That is their starting goaltender right now. And Fleury's numbers, I think, are on the up. Right? Like he wasn't doing so hot at the start of the season. If he's respectable, plus you got Gustafson, who's just on fire right now, you're looking real good goaltending wise in Minnesota.
I'll tell you
they
what.
Can be sneaky, man. I don't know if you want to draw them in the first round. When you got a hot goalie like that, right?
I'll tell you what. Looking at their defense, looking at the numbers of Fleury and Philip Gustafson right now, it almost makes you think, like, is the offense the worst part of this team? Is an offense with Matt Boldy and Kirill Kaprizov the worst part of this Minnesota Wild team? I think you're onto something with them being sneaky. I think
they're like slightly above average in each category, I'd say, right? Like their offense obviously headlined by superstar talent. But like on the whole, when you have like Ryan Hartman playing 1C or like guys like Frederick Gaudreau having to like come into the top six, that type of stuff, not ideal, but still slightly above average offense, slightly above average defense, maybe even just straight up above average goaltending. That might be the strength right now, just based off the numbers. They're just a good team. Good team. And that's kind of what the Minnesota Wild have been for like more than a decade. Good team that goes out in the first round. We'll see if they can start scratching off that reputation, but it remains to be seen. We'll see.
They do have a lot of pieces that we do like, and I agree with you in the sense that like they are a good team. Hopefully they break their Minnesota mild curse, Minnesota mid, because obviously it's been like that for what? Since we were born basically. But we'll see.
You know what it is? They gotta go back to the yellow, green, and white color scheme. Okay, go Minnesota North Stars. You've got two reverse retros that you could just turn into your home and away. Do it next year, Minnesota. You'll see numbers will be much better. You look like a way better offensive team when you wear those numbers. Just saying.
I
Just
I
saying.
like I like the middle stripe. Actually, I love it. When I first saw it, I was like, man, that might be the best. Then I saw Florida's, and I was like, that is the best. But we'll see.
Teach their own. Teach
Yeah.
their own.
Okay. Let's go into the Stanley Cup champions, or the reigning champions. They added a player for my team, Lars Eller, and you guys got scammed. Oh my goodness. Okay. In all seriousness, I think that a second is fair given Eller's playoff numbers. He's one of those guys that turns it up in the playoffs, and he was always really clutch in the playoffs, and that makes sense. Like you'd want him on the ice if it's an important moment. He used to not be the guy to make the mistakes. Obviously, the past 2 seasons he's kind of fallen off just a little, well, a lot, to be honest. But I think that in the playoffs, something snaps in his head, and he decides, okay, now I'm going to be the shutdown center. Now I'm going to be the guy to do it. And obviously, Colorado, they still need their 2C. I don't think Lars Eller in this current day and age is enough to provide that behind McKinnon. But at the end of the day, they got somebody to fill that gap. They have depth. They have McKinnon. They have Rantanen. They have a good team and they're the reigning champions. It just, will they stay healthy? Will Makar stay healthy specifically? Because
That's the big one, man. He's been in and out, and so many like false starts. I'm really tired of seeing like on my feed, Kale McCarr says he's good to go, and then Kale McCarr has been placed on injured reserve. I do not want to see that. Whatever Kale McCarr is dealing with, concussion or otherwise, do not fool around with this guy. This guy is a top 5 NHL player, top 2 defenseman in the league. It's like him and Fox. Maybe you want to throw Carlson in there this year.
oh, we've been on
Like
about this.
yeah, I know. I'm not. That's why I'm just.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna. I wasn't gonna say he's the best defenseman. I'm like, no, I'm not getting into that argument with Brian again. But listen, man, do not fool around with that guy's health. Just for the Colorado Avalanche's sake and the sake of the whole NHL, that's not a guy whose health we want to be messing around with. Listen, when this roster is healthy, and I guess that's the biggest thing that needs to be figured out is come playoff time. Is it going to be a fully healthy roster? If it is, it really is another gross roster here in Colorado. I know you said they don't have their 2C, and it probably is going to be 2C by committee, but JT Compher has honestly done pretty well in the 2C hole. You know how many points JT Compher has in 59 games? It kind of caught me off guard too.
I'm gonna go 30 on the dot.
He got 42 points. 42
That's not
points in
bad.
59 games. That's a 0.71 point per game clip. So if we want to round that up to 0.75, that's 3 points every 4 games. That's like a 60-ish point pace. He'll probably finish with like 55.
That's
You,
not
you
bad
take
for.
that on your you take that as your 2C when you have the context of the guys in the rest of their top 6. Like you said, McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen. That's your big 3. Rantanen this year has added the goal scoring. He was always viewed as like a playmaker. Now he's like a full-on Draisaitl. The guy freaking snipes goals like no tomorrow. He literally is the fastest Avalanche to 40 goals in history, faster than Joe Sakic. That's pretty impressive, man. Lehkonen and Nichushkin round out that top 6. You have Rodriguez who can maybe fill in on that second line. 27 points in 48 games. All right,
I think Rodriguez is
and they can always have that veteran. Sorry,
I think Rodriguez is a solid like second liner. I genuinely believe that. Like,
he can do it in a pinch. He can do it in a pinch. I don't know if I want him there full time, but it's going to be a second line by committee. It's going to be who's hot. You get to play on the second line. I think Lars Eller, yeah, he's probably going to be that 3C. He might even be the 4C because right now the 4C is Newhook. I don't really know if we want Newhook on that fourth line. It might stylistically make more sense to throw Eller on that fourth line, flank him with Cogliano and Darren Helm. That's a gross fourth line, right? Like I do not want to go up against that fourth line. They'll bury you.
they might. I'm looking at the roster right now. Their third line might
Yeah.
be like, it's solid. If assuming it's Newhook, Eller, Rodriguez, that's not a bad third line at all, and it's competitive. And the main thing is, it allows it acts in a way that it's a shutdown line. Essentially, it prevents the other, like, whoever lines they're playing is from
It's
scoring.
just a blanket.
Yeah,
Nothing's going to happen when those guys are on the ice. No one's scoring. Either team, probably.
and at
But
that
it's
point,
fine. You want a punt line, right?
and at that point, the onus is on the first line to score. And come on,
Exactly.
like you bet money on the fact that Rantanen, McKinnon, Landeskog will score or something like that.
Oh yeah,
That's not betting
oh
advice,
yeah,
by the way.
and dude, their defense very very
Best defense
gross.
in the league.
Devon Taves, gross. Kale McCarr, grossest of them all. Bowen Byram, like just really damn gross. Gerard in a down season is still pretty good. If he's your number four, you're chilling. Josh Manson is injured, so once he comes back, Gerard is like the five, and then your six is Eric Johnson if he's healthy, or else you are running out guys like that are just names as the six if there is injuries, like it's Jack Johnson, Brad Hunt, Curtis McDermott. Not the best names, but when it is healthy, very stacked blue line. And then goaltending, Georgiev has held up his end of the bargain as a number one goalie with a 921 save percentage, 26 and 12 record. It's another good team in Colorado. They might not be outright the class of the West, but they're going to be in contention. They'll be right there.
Isn't it crazy how this, like the reigning champions from last year, the team that everybody was salivating over last year, isn't even top three in our minds this year? Just shows you how competitive the
It's
rest of the league is.
totally injuries, though. That's the thing,
Yes.
right? It is totally due to injuries. And funny enough, if you do look on betting apps, they're still the number two for Stanley Cup odds.
Who's
And
number one?
that honestly surprises me.
Boston?
Oh, I wonder who could be number one. Yeah,
Oh,
those
okay.
those guys over there. That's another topic for another video. We'll get to them eventually. But Colorado is still sitting at number two.
They're a really good team. And man, I wish I had that defense. I wish I had Kill McCarr.
Oh my
But
god, man.
that's that's okay. We off they took Eller, so like they're forgiven. I just also wanted to say this. Like a couple of years ago, Brian McClellan used to use Colorado as like an offshore account. We would just send players there in the past, and you would think like it's Colorado, just capitals B, but it turns out Joe Sakic,
Varlamov?
Varlamov, that's another one that's classic. But at the end of the day, Joe Sakic has done an excellent job, and hopefully, Makar is healthy and they don't mess around with South. Like I know we talked over this, but I just want to bring this up. It kind of reminds me of like the Aaron Ekblad saga. Unfortunately, you have such a raw talent, such a great player, probably like better.
I feel
Like look,
like Ekblad is more like injury prone. Like I feel like the onus is on Ekblad there. And that's why I'm worried with McCarr that like I don't think he's an injury prone guy, right? I feel like this might be I don't know if it's the team rushing him. It could be McCarr saying, "Put me back in. I'm good to go," and he's really not. But that's the difference there. I honestly just kill McCarr for like 2 weeks. Make sure he is all right. You don't mess around with that guy. You don't.
and obviously, like given the situation with Ekblad's career, like you don't want to
Yeah.
see a Makar's career go down that
No.
same path. But
No.
but oh my goodness. But that's the end of the Colorado. Let's move it over to a Canadian team. Let's go to the Jets. They added a player that you were very interested in, Nino
Very,
Niederreiter.
very interesting. You don't need a rider. That's their big move. I think the only really other move they made was the Nemestikov pickup. That was one that I was kind of like, I wonder if the Leafs sniff around Nemestikov after he gets traded to San Jose.
I
But
feel
no, he,
so
he
bad for
goes to
that guy.
Winnipeg. Sorry?
I feel so bad for that guy.
He gets tossed around too. He gets tossed around
Yeah,
every single trade deadline. Don't worry, he'll resign in Tampa Bay in the summer for like the fourth time, only to get traded again. Yeah, I don't know why he keeps doing it to himself, but yeah, the Nino Niederreiter pickup, honestly, maybe one of the best trades at the deadline, if you're asking me. Second round pick for Nino Niederreiter at a satisfying like amount of money. Like you're not worried about 4 million. Not for a second round pick, not for what Nino Niederreiter gives you as a solid second line player. He can totally play on your first line too. And he's got 4 million this year and next year. One of the best moves at the deadline. Absolutely love Nino Niederreiter. Dave loves Nino Niederreiter. I think you're at least a fan of Nino Niederreiter.
yeah, I think he's
And the
good.
Mestikov, yeah, like he's good. He's 100% good.
He's worth every
He's only
penny.
got 29 points in 58 games. Like he's only at a .5 pace on the dot. But that's on the national team that like didn't score. Those guys like
The
were allergic to scoring goals.
For me, the value in Nino Niederreiter is that he fits into any system and he's so defensively
Yeah,
sound. So
yeah.
honestly, it's a really good pickup. I just want to ask you, what do you think about their top six? Because I've seen it and it's disgusting. It's so good.
So we're at the point now where I was gonna say like, they have like a top three, top six. They kind of don't
They don't
because
know.
so many teams right now
Are
have a
loaded.
gross top six. Off the top of my head, Colorado top six, really good. Boston top six, gross, gross, gross. Rangers, nasty. Leafs, nasty. That's four teams right there before I even get to Winnipeg, and you could probably throw other ones in there too. So it's they're obviously in the conversation. They're guaranteed top 10 with their top six there. Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Nino Niederreiter, Nikolai Ehlers, Pierre-Luc Dubois. That's really freaking good. I will say though, their bottom six does worry me. It
It's
is
not too
honestly
hot.
just a bunch of guys. It really is a bunch of guys. Morgan Barron, um, this is probably his rookie season. Kevin Stenlund, that guy's been around the block. I think he started with Columbus. He's only got 7 points in him. Carson Coolman, been on waivers a bunch of times. Boston, Seattle, Sacramento line, and kind of just a journeyman. David Gustafson, that's a
Fialbi.
younger guy. That's a guy with maybe some, yeah. And then you're a guy there, AJF. He's got the flow. He's got the style. We'll see if he's got the play to keep up. But you do have domestic outcome in. So one of those guys is going to get knocked out. Mason Appleton is injured too. He has only played 22 games this year. The big loss, and he should hopefully be back early in the playoffs. I hope so for their sake. Cole Perfetti. That's going to be one of their big additions, if you want to say that, come playoff time. He had 30 points in 51 games before getting injured. His expected timeout is 2 months. Huge, huge loss for Winnipeg there,
Pretty good
and that's
timing
going to
though.
be the difference, man. It's good
Potentially.
timing if he comes back early enough in the playoffs. 2 months, and I think he only got injured like a couple weeks ago. It's cutting it close. I think regular season ends on April 13th. So I don't know. They gotta hope that he rests up. Goaltending on the Winnipeg front, tough to complain. Connor Hellbuck, 920 save percentage. Riddick's low key been good for them. 908 save percentage in 18 games. So it's a pretty good team. We didn't really talk about the defense here. You have Morrissey in a we have Josh Norrisy. That's what I should say. You got Josh Norrisy. DeMello fills in very nice. He's like their TJ Brody. Brendan Dillon, physical guy. Neil Pionk, honestly having a down season, not putting up the same numbers offensively. Logan Stanley, we know, asked for trade, didn't get traded, so that'll be an interesting one. And then Nate Schmidt. If Nate Schmidt's on your bottom pair, I think that's you're in a decent spot.
They're they're
But still, it is a kind of a light defense there at the bottom. Like it's probably their weakest link.
I actually like their top five. Josh Norrisy, offensive juggernaut. Pionk obviously is not performing how he was last year, but as a four, it's not bad. You can't complain. Ben
No, yeah.
Brendan Dillon was like a capital at one point. He was a fan favorite. He brought some energy when we needed it, and he brings that scrap that you need in the playoffs, right? Obviously, he shot off his old line partner's ear off, but hopefully he doesn't do that this offseason or this postseason.
I think yeah, I do like the names. I think the biggest thing is like you go from Morrissey to like who's their number two. Their new number two is probably Pionk. It's a big drop off this year. It's a big drop off. Um, I honestly though you're all right. Like that's five names that the names themselves without doing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thing are good names. Maybe it is the bottom six
It's just Logan
that's
Stanley that
tough.
sucks.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe I do go back to that bottom six. That's just kind of a bunch of names right now. So health forbidding, they might be adding two or three guys to that forward group. They're still good, man. And bonus plays a good system, a defensive system. We saw it in Dallas, and when it was in Dallas, it was like stifling offense of the other team and his own team. Like nothing happened in games. That Calgary Dallas series, where Jake Ottinger stood on his head, was nuts. It like there were like 3 goals a game average in that series. It was kind of weird, and yet it was still exciting to watch because they go so hard at
Such a
each other.
battle.
Sutter and Bonus, it was a battle, but Bonus's system works better in Winnipeg because Winnipeg does have a little bit more offensive talent than Dallas did last year. You're getting the best of both worlds.
No, I agree. Speaking of
Yeah,
forwards, speaking of offense, let's go to a team that dumped 3 forwards, the St. Louis Blues. They
yeah. The
dumped
Blues, they lose their captain, man. Right?
They lose Ryan
I
O'Reilly, Vladdy
yeah
Tarasenko, Ivan Barbashev, and they acquired Jake Vrana.
yeah, and they for some reason, not for some reason, they are gonna retool. That's obvious. They picked up Kapanen off waivers. Um, let's start with your guy Brian. Let's start with Verana. That was the most recent pickup, and they got him for what, like was it a seventh,
A
man?
seventh and a no
It
namer.
was
A seventh and a
yeah.
body.
So he does have a cap hit that's kind of high next year as well. It's like five something, right? It's at least four something. So
I think that
if he
this
doesn't provide them anything, it's like that's a lot of money to be eating for nothing. But doesn't it make you wonder now what is St. Louis's plans next year? Like they Kapanen too has he's on the contract next year too. I'm gonna be really curious to see what they do next year. If they're trying to aggressive retool, I'll be curious to see what they do in the offseason. In terms of like who they lost, obviously losing huge names, but they brought back a ton of draft capital. I almost feel like they don't hold all that draft capital based off all the rumors we heard about Chikrin and Meyer. They were in on both those guys. Any other type of player that becomes available like that in the offseason, they'll be in on them too. And that's what I'm saying. Like they're gonna try a bit of an aggressive retool. They're gonna be trying to be back in the playoff picture next year. What are the things that are holding them back from that? It's the story that we had a lot with the Pacific Division, aka the moves that the team didn't make. They were floating Pareko's name around. At least some insiders were. It it was reported though by the end of yesterday that he was never asked to waive his no trade clause. If Pareko has value around the league, I think that's a contract that you try and get out from under because he isn't the Pareko of old. He's kind of just relying on his reputation as a stalwart right-handed defenseman. That was fantastic for them in the Stanley Cup run and the years before that. But man, if he could have been offloaded, that's one that I think they're going to come to regret because their defense has
not
been
much work.
kind of horrid this year. Like their forwards don't really play defense. Like Jordan Kyrou, like defense is optional for that guy. Their actual defense plays defense optionally. Guys like Nick Leddy, Torrey Krug, Justin
Falk.
Falk, not exactly defense first guys, right? That Nick Leddy contract is a bad one for Dougie Armstrong. And I like St. Louis in general, but that's a rough one. And then we got Dave's favorite in net. We got Jordan Binnington, who at this point I think he could use a fresh start. I don't know if they're going to be able to give him one because who's going to take a chance on him? They're a very interesting team that it just feels like a jumble of players right now. Like it's just all over the place, and they're going to need an off season to like really set their new path. Right now, I don't know what to make of the Blues. Just in the vacuum of what they did on the trade deadline, yeah, you got a bunch of draft assets. That's good. We'll see how they use them to try and compete again next year because I think that's what they're going to try and do.
I I actually really like the Vrana move for St. Louis. I get it, the cap hits a lot, but they offloaded so much money. I don't even think that it impacts them considering they're trying a retool anyway. It's only for
It
one
only
season.
impacts them if they try and contend next year. That's the whole thing, right?
It's only for one season, and I'll tell you what. In regards to Rana, there's only one player in the league that beats him 5-on-5 goals. Who is this one player? Well, when he's
Is,
like up
is
to
it
form,
is it Forsberg or Matthews?
it's Matthews.
Yeah.
But if you think about it like that, like there's only one player that scores more goals 5v5.
I don't know if we're talking about the same Verana though, right? Which is
That's
unfortunate, right? That's the thing. He
I
needs he needs a season to just reset, and I don't think you can have those type of expectations for him.
no,
I think it's unfair on him, man. It's
but
unfair.
but for 5.25, if you get second line,
You take the chance.
yes, you get you if he gets second line points, it's a pass. If he gets third line points, you tried, right?
I think even third line, like I'd be okay if he put up third line numbers next year, considering the context of what he's been through. I think that's fine,
And
right?
I'll,
Because
I'll
then
tell you,
he sets himself up to get like another like third line money contract, and then he can really try and start getting back to that second line production.
and you know what? If hopefully he does, we'll see. In regards to their moves, I really like how St. Louis is kind of passing the torch by with these moves, in the sense that they're getting rid of the old guard. You know, remember that when you think of that cup run, do you think of three players? Ryan O'Reilly, Pareko. Well, Binnington as well, but Petrangelo
Yeah,
is the other one.
Angelo. Yeah, yeah.
But now that all these guys
It's
are gone, it's kind of like they're passing the torch over to Thomas and Kyrou, and well, they don't really have anybody coming up on
that's
defense,
kind of
but
it, right?
yeah,
That's the thing. They need to add to that core, that new core, right? We always talked about the vet core. It's gone. Um, you got to find running mates for Kyrou and Thomas. So we're gonna see how they're gonna try and do that.
hopefully that running mate is Rana, but we'll see. Let's go into the next team, probably the most mid team and your President's Trophy team, the Nashville Predators. Um, they sold Ekholm, they sold Granlund, and they acquired Asplund
Niederreiter.
and Niederreiter. Yes. We're not gonna let's not get into Niederreiter right now because it's kind of the same thing with
No,
Granlund. Um,
yeah,
and Ekholm, they just realized that it was time to move on and sell and retool. I guess. I like their ass. I like their pieces. I like what they got for what they sold. The problem is with the Preds. Why doesn't it work? They have like their team on paper looks good. Everything they've had looks good.
yeah. I'm inclined to believe what Dave was preaching last episode, where we thought he prophetically brought the firing of John Hines into existence. He came kind of close to it because we had reports that were saying that, but hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's an off-season move. I kind of do think that that's part of it. It's at very least part of it. I do like a lot of their individual pieces. What they're running out right now is a skeleton of a roster. Like you've got Kiefer Sherwood on your second line. Excuse me, John Leonard. What? What
But isn't that
on your
just because
first line left
isn't that
wing?
just because everybody's hurt? Like if we're gonna use that
It's
escape
it's
force,
not really though, man. It's Forsberg on IR and Johansson.
those are two big pieces, right?
But if you're losing Forsberg and Johansson, and then you have John Leonard and Kiefer Sherwood
That's true.
as the replacements, that's That's not good. That's not good. Cody Glass is their 1C right now, okay? And he's
Yeah.
actually doing okay. 24 points, 49 games. Have you ever heard of this guy, bro? Do you know who Thomas Novak is?
No.
Thomas Novak has played 28 games and has 22 points. I just learned who Thomas Novak is today. I guess I'm gonna have to
Keep
keep in
tabs on him.
touch with Thomas Novak because yeah, he's got a .8 rate, point per game rate right now. Phil Tomasino, they finally brought him up. I don't know where this guy's been all season. They've been stashing him in the A after playing a rookie season last year. Kind of weird. I just I do like all the draft capital they added. I don't know why Tyson Berry is still on this roster. I feel like they should have flipped him before the deadline. Like that one doesn't make too much sense to me. The Ryan McDonough deal looks very bad, honestly. And this is coming from someone who thought it would solidify their decor, but that was when you had a guy like Eckelman here too. It now just kind of it doesn't make too much sense. He's making 6.75 until 2026. Ryan McDonough. That is
Yeah.
a lot for a 33-year-old. That's a lot, man. That is a bit of an anchor. Um,
I'm
they
not a
do have
big
Soros.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not a big McDonough guy. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I was never too impressed with him.
I'm a big McDonough guy when he's your like number 4 or 5, right? Like
Yeah.
when you have Yossi, Ekholm, um, Carrier had a really good season last year. He's been kind of garbage this year. Um, and then you have McDonough and Fabro. Like those are 6 names. Now it's not. It looks totally different. These guys, honestly, I think they should lean
Re-
probably rebuild,
that works out.
right?
That works out though because obviously he just got a brand new GM and it kind of gives him the opportunity to build his team instead of taking whatever Poyle gave him. Well, obviously, new GM Barry Trotz. They did like this whole thing from Barry's home, but uh, at least you get like a new GM with the opportunity to do his new thing instead of just passing the torch. Obviously,
Can you rebuild though when you have these 3 names on your roster?
Philip Forsberg.
UC Saros, Roman Yossi, Philip Forsberg. Can you
Yes,
rebuild?
there's a world in which it happens, right?
It would have to be fast and it would have to be good. Like these guys need some lottery luck. That's what I think they need to.
You
They
you
need
asked
that type of Kickstarter.
people ask the same question: can you rebuild with Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, and they had another guy there, but
Those were the guys though. Like that was the rebuild guys. Like they drafted Stamkos first. They got Hedman third or second.
different.
So
I know what you mean, like different time frame, like just a couple years
there's
older.
no Stamkos and Hedman at their age here, right? Like
Yeah,
Yossi's 32.
that's true. It's
He's
just
making 9 million until 2028.
it's
I
just with
just
like they you have the way I see it, you have a GM coming in with class A assets and a rest of the roster that he can play with, right?
I think they're going to try and do a retool as well. That's what I'm saying. I don't think they're going
And
to try to rebuild.
and
They
if they
should rebuild if you're just like in logistics, but those three contracts are going to prevent them. They're going to try and do retool. I don't know how many of the draft picks they're going to end up using.
if they do have the opportunity to retool, they definitely do have the draft capital now, just considering what they
Yeah,
got for Ekholm. But yeah, I mean, tough luck in Nashville. Hopefully things get better for them. Let's move on to the next
we
team.
should say
Yep.
the Jeannot trade. Like they got the boatload back for him, and that might like be a really big feather in David Poyle / Barry Trotz's cap that could really enable them to do a lot more than what we expected, just from what you thought they could get for Jeannot. So yeah, like you said, they got tons of draft capital. We'll see which direction they take. I just wanted to mention the Jeannot trade because we didn't bring it up there.
Yeah, we'll bring it up in the
Tampa
Atlantics,
won. Yeah.
but it's probably because it's probably bigger news for them. Nashville just won the lottery. Let's be honest here. But speaking of a lottery, let's talk about the team that's gonna win the lottery, the Arizona Coyotes. uh, they did a lot. I'm just looking at like what I have now. They
Yeah.
sold their second best player, best defenseman. They brought on a dead contract in Jacob Voracek. They sold Ghost. They sold Bugstad. They sold Stetcher. They're just
Hey,
selling everything.
correction. They sold their best player. Okay, you want to have this debate, bro? You want to have this debate, man? Okay, Chikrin versus Keller. I know you. I know you want. I'm just.
Yeah,
We're not gonna have
yeah.
a debate here. It's a toss up. Clayton Keller's 100% their most important forward, and Chikrin is was 100% their most important defense. Thank God the Chikrin saga is over, but goddamn, why did it have to be this long? It shouldn't have been a saga if you were just gonna take that return.
Do you have the
Ottawa.
return?
Do you have the return there,
I
or do you
don't
want
have
me
the
to get
return.
it?
I just do you have the return?
I'll
Because
pull up the return for you. Here you go. You get a first round pick, you get a second round pick, and you get a flat second round pick. Those first two picks have condition on the first. Top five protected in 2023, so this year. If the condition is met, the pick becomes an unprotected 2024 first. The second round pick is if Toronto, if Ottawa makes the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals, the pick becomes a 2024 first rounder, top 10 protected. Um, and then it also becomes a 2025 first round protected if that pick is still top 10. So it's basically a first and 2 seconds. I feel pretty confident saying Ottawa will not be making the Eastern Conference Finals this year. Clip this and put it on cold freezing takes if that does happen. But I'm willing to plant my flag that it doesn't, as much as I want the Sens to make a playoff push. So Arizona got a first and 2 seconds for Jacob Chikrin. And they basically said, yeah, so we like this return because we don't have to pay money for any player coming back. Keep that internally if that's what you're going to tell us. Don't even tell us that, Bill Armstrong. Like,
that
just
was
keep
the
that between you and the owner. I don't need to hear that because that's kind of demoralizing as an NHL fan.
that statement. Like you could have said that for
Thumbs
every
it up.
single move that they did
Yes.
this offseason. And sorry, not this offseason, this trade deadline. And it's kind of sickening. Like
It's just like when you have Bettman putting out memos saying, "Hey guys, don't trade for injured players that might come back at playoff time because we'll be watching you." And then Arizona is training for guys who have insured contracts because they're basically LTIR retired. It's just like, are those two things really different? Is is not both of them cap circumvention? How do you call one cap circumvention and not the other? Right? That's the thing here. You're paying dead money just so you can reach the cap floor. In reality, the actual amount of dollars they're spending is like nothing. right? They're basically guaranteed the cap floor for next year, and they're going to probably make no moves in the offseason. For the sake of Connor Bedard, I hope he doesn't end up there. And this is as someone who is saying like, hey, they've got pieces, like there's things that can be done there. It sounds like they just don't want to spend any money next year. So I can't really put my support behind the rebuild until I see that they're willing to spend money, like real money on real players, right? Not imaginary money. Did you see the post? Like, well, there's been a bunch of them. Have you seen like the photoshops of like, here's the Arizona Coyotes LTR retired roster, where it's like Shea Weber in
Oh,
a
it's
Arizona
stacked. It's a
jersey,
Hall of
Pavel
Fame.
Datsyuk,
It's like
Chris
the
Pronger. It's a Hall of Fame lineup, man. Hall of Fame LTIR retired lineup.
you think one question we get into before we go into Voracek and that saga again. Do you think they got enough for Chikrin?
No, man, no.
I don't think so
After
either.
all the time that they waited out and saying that we want four pieces that are worth a first round pick, hell no. But at the same time, I'd rather them have took this than keep him past the deadline because I don't know if they were going to get any more than this come the summer or whatever.
For
So
for that price for Chikrin, I'm surprised that another team didn't outbid it.
yes, no, me too. Washington, St. Louis,
Literally
like
any team with
you can
multiple
go on
firsts.
Pittsburgh. Yeah, yeah. Like you can make so many different arguments. Um, I will never know really what kind of happened there because it sounded like the price dropped last minute, and that's how Ottawa swooped back
They
in.
panicked.
Because even Ottawa was apparently not too sure that their package was going to be good enough, and they were kind of surprised that it flew by. They didn't give up any prospects, man. There was all the talk about Shane Pinto or like Ridley Greig. They kept them,
Nothing.
man. I think that is low key one of the themes of this deadline is the buyers got their guys without any top prospects going, right? None of the top prospects on any team got moved. Can't think of one. Holtz didn't go,
Clark
and
didn't go.
Greig and Pinto didn't go, right? Like none of the guys went.
No, you're right. That is an interesting theme.
I will say, I do have to point this out because I sent this in our chat. Their outlook for draft picks in the
Insane.
next 3 years. I'm just counting here. They have this year in the first 3 rounds,
9.
they have 7 draft picks in the first 3 rounds this year. Next year, they've got 8. The year after that, they've got 7. So that's what 20. You got 14, 8. You got 22 draft picks in the next 3 years, just the first 3 rounds. That's how many you're supposed to have from rounds 1 through 7 for the next 3 years. They have that much quantity in just the first 3 rounds. They got to hit on some of those picks or they got to translate them into players. But knowing Arizona, they're not going to translate them into players and they're going to pick guys. And their scouts better be working really hard right now because they're going to they can basically camp out at the draft podium in June because they're going to be picking often.
So they also sold Stetcher. They also sold Bukestad. These are both guys that you're a fan of, specifically Bukestad.
Yeah, I'm surprised they only went for a third. I think the talk on him was a second, and he's put up better production than Lars Eller. Yes, Lars Eller has all that playoff experience. So I just I'm surprised more teams are interested in Bukestad because he's got only a 900K cap hit. Like any contender could
Could
have
have gotten him for
dropped that
nothing.
guy into their lineup, right? And he's been a 3C. But he's been playing like decent minutes for Arizona. Like I think he's playing like 16, 17 minutes a night. He's your 3C or your 4C, you're doing really good. Very nice pickup by Edmonton, but like it's whatever for Arizona. They got their third round pick. Who even knew that Bukestad would be good this season? That was no guarantee at all. So when you look at it that way, I guess they got their money's worth, right?
I want to look at the roster right now. Is there anything even noteworthy to talk about? Because like they literally sold everything. I mean,
So like
Dave was telling us
yeah, Dave
yesterday.
sent us the roster. It is a bunch of names. They've got who is Milos Kellerman? Who is that? Who is Kesselrin? Is he half Phil Kessel, half Stanley Cup ring? I don't think so.
Not on this
Who
team.
is they've got Jean-Sebastien D is back in the NHL. Lord Dauphin, that guy's still around. Um, like they're very lucky that one of the low-key stories of the season is Matthias Michelli, who has been a very good rookie for them, 30 points in 44 games. He's probably having like one of the quietest rookie seasons this year.
Are you
But I have no faith in this team right now. Like,
are you surprised Pamelka didn't get moved?
is he UFA? He okay. He's got it this year and 2 more years after at 2.725. So they they could obviously trade him next year. They could trade him in the off season. Um, if he shows up again next season,
He
I
gets
think that's
moved.
probably his peak value. I think that's his peak value if he has another good season next year. Because he was on and off last year. Bad numbers last year, but
Bad
he
team.
had individual games. Yeah. And he had individual games where he stonewalled guys. The Leafs got absolutely stonewalled by Vajmelka last year and this year. Okay. Another solid season next year. You can probably cash in on him for like maybe a low
Second.
first.
Yeah.
If a team, honestly, like if a contending team has like a 1A, but they want a 1B as well, that's who you go to, I think.
They have a lot of things to fix. And oh my
On ice,
goodness.
off ice,
Just
everything. Like
everything. But at the
and,
end of
and it's tough to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like they have to show us, they have to show their own fans and the rest of the NHL that they are like a meaningful franchise. And right now, it's not looking too good.
let's go to a meaningful franchise. Original six team, bottom of the standings, Chicago Blackhawks. Oh, where do we start? Let's start with this one. They sold Patrick Kane. They sold Showtime to the biggest city, the biggest lights to the Rangers. They sold Jake McCabe to the second biggest franchise in the league, and they sold Max Domi to Dallas. They took on so many draft picks. You were talking about draft picks earlier with Arizona. Isn't I'm pretty sure Chicago's in a similar boat right now. They got a
So Arizona's
whole
like the class of the league for draft picks, but like Chicago's definitely doing pretty well for themselves. I do want to start with Patrick Kane because I went on a little bit of a rant last episode before the Patrick Kane deal came in, and I was saying like all I ask is that the Kane to the New York trade is like it just
dignifiable.
passes the smell test, right? Yeah, like it's not an embarrassment of a trade where he's getting traded for like a fourth or something. It ends up being a second and a fourth. I'm gonna pull up the conditions because I think they are worth bringing up.
The condition for the
Um,
second, it becomes a first if the Rangers make it to the ECF, Eastern Conference Final.
and there's a decent chance. If you're asking me, like out of the Metro, I like the Rangers' chances probably the most. I know they're not in first right now, but I like the roster the best. So it has a decent chance to become a first, and that is making me say that the trade is good enough. It passes the smell test in my mind. I'm not too mad that Patrick Kane held the Blackhawks feet to the fire and said it's New York or nothing. Because it was an okay trade. It was all right.
I think
Obviously you expect to get more for literally one of the best players of his generation, but the context, the return makes sense. Um,
I
the
think that
McCabe deal, honestly, I'm surprised they were willing to take back $2 million for 3 years. That's not nothing, man. There's not many teams that are willing to do that. I'm kind of surprised, and I think that's a telling sign that Chicago knows they're gonna not be good for a while, right? Like they're gonna be the same team next year. It's not gonna look much different next year.
organizationally they have a lot to fix as well. You know what? It's we've seen Chicago like do so well for so long. Well, for the beginning, you know what I mean? The 2010 to 2015 era,
Yeah,
Chicago or nothing at
our
that point.
our upbringing is we only know good Chicago, right? This has kind of been a shock to be
It's
honest,
and I'll
right?
tell you what, as much as I love Patrick Kane, as much as I like loved watching that Chicago team play, I will say this: it sucks. Karma. You dominate the league for so long. It's gonna be a good
I'm
change.
surprised you're having that take. I'm surprised you don't have more sympathy because Kane went to the Rangers, and I think you hate the Rangers more than anyone else. So I'm surprised you're like, yeah, Blackhawks fans, I get it. through the
I,
Rangers. They're the villains. I'm
like
surprised it's not that.
I like Kane as a player. Kane is like he's in there
Yeah.
in my top five, like 100%. He's up there. He's right. There's a good chance he's my favorite non-capital player, right? But at the end of the day, I just feel like gotta give the guy a chance to go and thrive somewhere else, especially considering he's gonna get a statue. Like it's already planned, right beside the Michael Jordan one.
It's already been molten. Lot like they've already poured out the metal. It's just sitting in some back room in the United Center right now, and we're just waiting for the announcement. It's there. It's already been made.
I will also say this, just one more slay at the Rangers before we get off Patrick Kane. Yeah, you paid that much just to get knocked out in the first round by the Devils. That's my take.
Hey. Okay. I will say, what do you think about them keeping Athanasiou? Do you think nobody wanted him, or this is one of the scenarios where they're like, well, we got to have someone play on the team for the rest of the year?
I don't
I
think
kind of,
I don't think
I
Athanasiu is
wonder.
that great. I have a connection with him.
Yeah, I don't either.
He goes to the same dentist as me, so there's that. I don't think he's that great. I mean, he's getting good numbers because obviously he's getting a lot of PT. But on a good team,
To me,
right?
he's like even more extreme Domi. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
he's just a
Like that's a
fast
guy I
player.
trust even less in the bright lights. So I kind of lean that maybe no contender really wanted to take a chance on him, to be honest.
Or maybe like it's just a guy. If he's on a contender, he's probably like a third liner at best. But like, do you really want that guy in your
I
third
don't
line?
trust him defensively. No, man. No. And
Yeah,
you don't want him in your top six because he's not good enough for top six.
I'm
He's just kind of wishy washy.
I'm looking at the Blackhawks roster right now. Just a bunch of nobodies, top to bottom, journeymen, top to bottom. I mean, Tess Jones, the biggest crook of them all, because well, he's a robber. I mean, he literally robbed Blackhawks of what, like $90
But
million
do you
dollars.
blame? Is it a robbery when someone like the? That's like if you went to a bank and
They gave it to
they
him.
unsolicitedly handed you the vault, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's I don't hold Jones. It's not his fault here. It's a guy who's no longer there. So hey, so Jones, enjoy your money. Lucky for you, it doesn't look like anybody's going to be worrying about how much money you make for at least another couple of years because your team won't be spending to the cap anytime soon. So
There's a
you're
there's
free from the spotlight for a little bit.
there's a clip on YouTube. And they're on the Blackhawks on our power play, right? Kane's on the wall, passes it back to Jones, but Jones like steps out of the blue line, and Kane just screams at him, "What are you doing?" Right? And I think that just encapsulates like the Blackhawks as a whole. What are you guys doing organizationally, top to bottom? Fix it. At least you have the assets to rebuild. This is a legacy organization. This is a class organization. If you look at the long term, like the whole 100 years conception of this team, they'll be back. But for now, it's nice to see them in the mud a bit. We'll see how they rebound, and I really hope that they don't win the lottery. This is the one team I think that does not deserve to win it, and I think that's the take for everybody across the board. But well, only time will tell, and this potentially could be a freezing, cold hard statement, like in I don't know 3 months, 4 months. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a very long rebuild, even if they do get Bedard.
Yeah, I think you're right. I hope they don't get him either. To be honest, yeah, they're low on my list. Bunch of other teams I'd rather see him go to. So yeah,
It's obviously what they're gunning for, though. At this point,
yeah.
like we've seen this story before with the Patrick Kane draft, but we'll see. Those are the central teams. I think that's good. I think we've gone over anything. Anything else you want to say?
I was gonna say the same line as Dave said in the Pacific Division, but he's coined that phrase, so I got to leave that one for him. So I'm gonna have to come up with better phrases for the other divisions. I've got nothing. Central, yeah, not much, not much.
not, not much on the ice as well. Not much on the organizational trades. Thank God we're going to the Metro Atlantic because these are teams that actually did stuff. I mean,
Icy stuff next.
I'm looking at the buys. Is Eller really the biggest buy?
Um, I would say okay. I'd have to go back through them again.
Actually, Niederreiter,
I feel
Niederreiter.
like yeah. Niederreiter definitely over Eller.
Niederreiter,
Let's go,
Klingberg,
Nito.
Eller. Those are the top three. That is something else. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. That concludes our overlook and takes of the Central Division for the 2023 NHL Trade Deadline. If you want to get a Colorado Avalanche Lars Eller jersey, NHLShop.ca. Shout out to Fubo. Shout out to Razor. Thanks for listening.